Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, our mission is really to get under the hood of what might be the most, well, audacious corporate strategy we've seen in ages. We're talking about OpenAI.
Right.
We're diving deep into their nonstop expansion, looking at the insights from Tenenbaum. He describes them as this octopus,
Yeah.
tentacles reaching into basically every corner of the tech world.
It's really apt analogy, I think, because it's not just about software anymore, is it?
No.
It's Tenenbaum's analysis really gives us a framework for understanding how the whole global economy is being rewired, like right now.
Yeah, and it's not just small changes he's talking about.
No, not at all. We're looking at, frankly, an existential threat to huge established industries and even the infrastructure, the pipes that hold everything up.
So the big question driving us today, I guess, is twofold.
Yeah.
First, how on earth did an AI firm get this kind of valuation? The kind usually reserved for, oil giants or tech companies that have been around for decades. And second, what does this relentless, almost frantic expansion actually mean? For infrastructure, yes, but also just for us, for human habits.
And what's just fascinating, as Tenenbaum points out, is the sheer speed, the breadth of it all. It feels almost unnatural.
Unnatural how?
Well, he suggests it's driven by two really powerful forces. One is this massive corporate anxiety, FOMO, fear of missing out, but on a corporate scale.
Okay.
And the second is just the overwhelming amount of capital sloshing around. Money desperate to find the next big growth engine.
That really sets the stage. So let's follow that money. Where is it all coming from?
Right, we absolutely have to start with the scale of the money involved, because it just changes the rules of the game for venture capital, doesn't it?
Completely. Tenenbaum highlights this amazing fact. OpenAI has raised more money than any other company in history before going public.
That alone tells you something huge. It really does.
Yeah.
It underscores just how much the market believes their success is basically inevitable. They're not betting on potential anymore. They see it as already happened in a way. Yeah, think about the usual path, right? Seed funding, Series A, B, C, years, proving you can actually make money. Then maybe an IPO for billions.
Right, the long haul.
OpenAI just sort of skipped a lot of that because the big players, especially the institutional investors and key partners like Microsoft, they saw the future value as like non-negotiable.
They paid for the future, not the present performance.
Exactly. They bought the destination, not the journey. #tag fear. The unprecedented capital race.
And central to this whole financial story, obviously, is Microsoft. This wasn't just, a friendly handshake deal.
No, it was foundational. It basically set the benchmark for OpenAI's valuation right from the start.
So what were the specifics of that deal? It was pretty complex, wasn't it?
Very complex. But the headline is, Microsoft secured a huge stake, around 27% of OpenAI.
27%. Wow.
And the structure wasn't just about cash injection. It was about strategic value, future profit sharing.
Mm.
It was woven deeply into both companies' futures. And the payoff for Microsoft.
It was immediate.
I remember the ripples when those numbers came out. The return wasn't just good, it was instantaneous.
Exactly. Tenenbaum breaks it down. Microsoft's initial investment, which was already pretty hefty, it multiplied by 10 times, basically overnight.
A 10x return. Like that?
Like that. The kind of return venture funds dream about achieving over, a decade.
Okay, let's put some hard numbers on that for the listener to really grasp the scale.
Right. So based on the deal structure, the initial valuation used for that investment was somewhere around, say, $13 billion.
Okay, 13. Still huge.
Still huge, yeah. But then after the restructuring and Microsoft locking in that 27% stake, their piece alone is now valued pretty conservatively at about $130 billion.
$130 billion, just Microsoft's share. Which, if you do the math, implies a total valuation for OpenAI itself again, before any IPO of around $500 billion.
$500 billion.
$500 billion.
For a private company. Working on tech that's, maybe 2 years old in the public eye?
It's mind-bending. The speed of that capital accumulation is just unprecedented.
Yeah.
And here's the kicker. Tenenbaum adds a really important note here. That $500 billion number, he's pretty sure it's already updated, meaning it's likely significantly higher right now because the tech is moving so fast, the deals are happening so fast.
So yesterday's estimate is already history.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
In this kind of hyperspeed environment, yeah. Yesterday's news, hashtag tag, tag, tag B, the $3 trillion speculation.
Okay, so if half a trillion is already maybe out of date,
Yeah.
let's talk about the really big numbers. The IPO speculation, this is where Tenenbaum gets, well, pretty provocative. The $3 trillion question.
Yeah, this is where it enters like science fiction territory almost.
Yeah.
Tenenbaum flat out states that if OpenAI decided to IPO today, right now, at a $3 trillion valuation, the offering would be, and this is his term translated, wildly oversubscribed.
Oversubscribed, meaning way more buyers than sellers.
Far more demand than shares available. It signals more than just excitement. It suggests like a financial panic among big investors, a feeling that they have to get in, that owning a piece of this is mandatory for the future.
$3 trillion. How do we even put that in context? Maybe compare it to NVIDIA. They're the infrastructure kings right now.
Good comparison. NVIDIA recently broke $5 trillion in valuation, which itself is staggering. Shows you the value the market is placing on the underlying AI infrastructure.
Right.
And Tenenbaum even throws out there that NVIDIA, if things continue like this, could maybe hit $10 trillion next year.
10 trillion, these numbers, they almost lose meaning.
They really challenge standard economic thinking. But to understand what's fueling this, Tenenbaum argues you have to see it as an infrastructure arms race,
Yeah.
a land grab.
You mean countries getting involved, not just companies.
Exactly. He gives this incredible example. NVIDIA just sold 500,000 specialized GPUs to South Korea.
500,000. Just
Yeah.
stop there for a second. These aren't the graphics cards you put in your gaming TC, right?
Not at all. These are highly specialized, complex processors, super difficult to make. And they're moving them in volumes like they're iPhones or something.
So why is that single sale so significant?
Because it proves Tenenbaum's point. For this sector, the sky's the limit isn't just a saying, it's literal.
Uh-huh.
When you see entire nations buying this stuff in bulk, you realize the competition for AI infrastructure isn't just corporate anymore, it's geopolitical.
National security, economic imperative.
All of it. The demand itself proves that everyone, companies, countries, believes this infrastructure is absolutely critical. No one wants to be left behind.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the listener. Why should someone running a small business or just trying to understand the world care about these crazy numbers, $500 billion, $3 trillion? What's the signal here?
The signal is a massive shift in what the global economy values. The market is basically screaming its belief that owning the AI infrastructure or leading the AI charge is potentially the most valuable asset on the planet right now.
More valuable than oil fields or manufacturing empires.
Potentially, yes. The valuation is a bet that whoever controls this layer will dwarf the industrial giants of the past. All this money flooding in, it's just capital chasing that belief, fueled by that deep fear of missing out on the foundation of the next digital age.
All right, let's move from the money, the sort of abstract financial side, to the real-world impact, the battlefront. This is where Tenenbaum's octopus analogy really hits home, right?
Absolutely. Because OpenAI isn't just sitting back polishing its main AI model of GPT. It's actively, aggressively pushing its tentacles out into adjacent markets, critical markets.
Yeah.
And it's deliberately picking fights with the biggest players out there.
Yeah, Tenenbaum's point is interesting. OpenAI seems focused on its own huge internal goals, right? But just by pursuing those goals, it inevitably ends up clashing with giants like Google.
Right. And maybe even more brutally, it's actively crushing the market value of smaller, established public companies in the process. It's not just a theoretical threat. Caveat. Taking on Google with the browser.
Okay, the most obvious, highest stakes fight right now seems to be the direct challenge to Google's main moneymaker, their core business.
You mean Chrome?
Exactly. OpenAI launched a new product aimed squarely at the Chrome browser. Tell us about Comet.
Right, the Comet browser. It's new, it's out there, and the crucial thing, according to Tenenbaum, is that it already has early-stage agent functionality built in.
Agent functionality. So it does stuff for you, not just shows you web pages.
Kind of. Think of it less like a passive window onto the web and more like a proactive assistant living inside your browser. And yeah, this is positioned as a direct assault on Google and Chrome.
And the timing is critical here, isn't it? Tenenbaum linked it to that recent court decision about Google.
Absolutely crucial context. There's that whole antitrust case, and for a while it looked like Google might be forced to sell off Chrome. That created huge uncertainty. But recently, a judge ruled Google didn't have to sell. The moment Chrome's future within Google seemed secure. Bam. OpenAI attacks.
Because Chrome is Google's golden goose.
Totally. Tenenbaum notes something like 40% of Chrome usage translates directly into Google's ad profits. It's the lifeblood. OpenAI is betting they can shift how people interact with the internet right at that core interface level.
But hang on, Chrome is everywhere. It's the default. People are used to it. How can a brand new browser, especially one maybe rushed out the door, actually compete?
That's the gamble. But OpenAI has an ace up its sleeve, its user base.
From ChatGPT.
Exactly. Tenenbaum argues ChatGPT is possibly the most used single application in the world today. Millions, maybe hundreds of millions, are already talking to OpenAI's AI every single day.
So the idea is it's not a huge leap for those users to start browsing through an OpenAI interface too.
Precisely. If Comet becomes the natural entry point for even just a fraction of those ChatGPT users, Google's dominance starts to look shaky pretty fast.
And the way they released Comet quickly, maybe not perfectly polished, that says a lot about their philosophy.
It says everything, speed over perfection. Tenenbaum highlighted it was released fast, almost like a beta Mac only initially.
Yeah.
People immediately pointed out security concerns, bugs.
But they shipped it anyway.
They shipped it because, as Tenenbaum puts it, their internal view is now there is no time. They need to get the product out, establish a foothold, start building that user habit now. Polishing comes later. The cost of being second is too high. Hashtag B, the destruction of public companies.
Okay, so taking on Google is one tentacle, but Tenenbaum also talks about the collateral damage, how OpenAI's smaller moves, maybe less headline grabbing, are just devastating established public companies in specific niches.
Yeah, this is where it gets quite stark. We're seeing market capital just evaporate for companies that were leaders in their fields just a year or two ago.
Let's look at some examples Tenenbaum gives. Coursera, for instance, the online learning platform.
Right. Coursera built a huge business on packaging up educational content, video lectures, quizzes, the drill, static content delivered at scale.
And how does AI just blow that model up?
Well, AI can now offer personalized tutoring. It can create custom learning paths on the fly based on exactly what you know and what you need to learn next. It can generate dynamic exercises, simulations.
So why buy a fixed package when you can get a bespoke education, potentially cheaper and faster?
Exactly. The core value proposition of Coursera just diminishes incredibly quickly. Their business model starts to look structurally obsolete almost overnight.
Okay, another one. Manpower, global HR and staffing giant. Their whole thing is human middlemen, right?
Totally. Finding candidates, screening resumes, matching skills to jobs, these are all process-heavy tasks.
Tasks that AI is getting really good at.
Extremely good. AI agents can screen candidates way faster, more consistently, maybe even less biasedly than humans. They can analyze huge data sets to find perfect matches instantly. The need for Manpower's armies of human recruiters just shrinks dramatically.
It cuts out the time, the margin for error, puts huge pressure on their model.
Immense pressure, yeah. And then there's the example Tenenbaum seemed particularly struck by, WPP, the massive global advertising agency network.
Right, the creative industry, supposedly safe from automation.
That was the line, wasn't it? WPP initially tried to play it cool, oh, we'll just use AI tools, it'll make us more efficient.
Yeah.
But Tenenbaum points out their latest financial report was, in his words, a disaster. The CEO had to publicly call the results unacceptable.
So just using AI wasn't enough.
It highlights a crucial point Tenenbaum makes. Using AI tools doesn't save you if the fundamental economics of your industry have been broken by AI. Meaning, if AI can now write ad copy, generate campaign ideas, even create decent quality video content faster and vastly cheaper than a huge agency with massive overheads.
Then the agency's profit margin disappears.
Exactly. Suddenly, those expensive offices, the thousands of staff, it looks incredibly bloated compared to an automated AI pipeline. WPP's rapid decline shows how fast AI can make even giant, profitable incumbents irrelevant. We're talking months, not years. Hashtag AKI, the ethics of shareholder money.
This destruction leads to a really pointed critique from Tenenbaum, aimed at the leaders, the CEOs of these companies that are clearly struggling against AI. He basically calls them irresponsible.
Yeah, he frames it as a matter of fiduciary duty. His argument is that these executives know they are fighting, as he puts it, fruitless wars against AI disruption. They can see the writing on the wall.
But they keep spending shareholder money anyway.
They keep burning cash on strategies that are doomed, just to keep the company alive a bit longer, even when the core business model is fundamentally broken.
So if they know it's a losing battle, what does Tenenbaum think the responsible thing to do would be?
The ethical choice, he suggests, is pretty stark. Stop the bleeding, recognize the game is up, liquidate the company while there's still significant capital left.
And give that money back to the shareholders.
Exactly. distribute the remaining funds to the actual owners of the company, and close the doors responsibly.
But they don't do that. They fight on. Why? What's the incentive?
Well, Tenenbaum's take is pretty cynical, but probably realistic. This ongoing fight allows management to keep drawing their salaries, collecting their bonuses, maintaining their status.
All paid for with investor money that's essentially being wasted.
Right. He sees it as extending their own careers and compensation packages at the direct expense of the shareholders. And he stresses this isn't just abstract money. Especially in places like the U.S., shareholder capital often represents people's retirement savings, their pensions.
So it's a lack of empathy. Management protecting themselves while eroding people's nest eggs?
That's his critique. He characterizes it as management basically skimming off a portion of people's retirement security to fund a prolonged, maybe ego-driven attempt to avoid admitting defeat and losing their own high-paying jobs.
That really shifts the frame, doesn't it? It's not just about tech disruption anymore. It's about corporate governance, ethics, maybe even ego.
Yeah, the human element, the fear of becoming irrelevant, the difficulty of saying we lost, and how that translates directly into real financial losses for ordinary investors.
It raises that uncomfortable question. Why are corporate structures often set up in a way that incentivizes management to prioritize their own survival over the owner's financial well-being when facing inevitable obsolescence?
That's a huge question Tenenbaum puts on the table.
Okay, let's pivot towards the future, because everything we've seen so far, ChatGPT, image generation, Tenenbaum, suggests that's just like the opening act.
Right.
The warm-up. The next wave, he argues, the revolution of autonomous AI agents, is going to be even bigger, exponentially bigger.
That seems to be the consensus from Tenenbaum and others deep in this space. We're moving beyond AI that just responds when you ask it something.
To AI that can actually do things.
Exactly. Initiate actions, make plans, execute complex multi-step tasks across different applications, all on your behalf, without needing constant hand-holding. Tenenbaum genuinely believes this shift to agents could be the biggest tech change since the internet itself.
Wow. Okay. Hashtag tag tag 10 stag A. The battle for the agent standard. So, if agents are the next big platform shift, then the company that defines how they work, the underlying rules, the standard,
Yeah,
they basically control the gateway to this new economy, right?
that's the prize. Whoever imposes the standard gains what Tenenbaum calls a preferential position. It's a massive competitive advantage. Maybe they don't own the whole market, but they own the most critical piece.
The technological high ground.
Precisely. And
Yes.
right now, the perception, according to Tenenbaum, is that OpenAI is probably the furthest ahead in developing these truly functional, autonomous agents.
And we're already seeing glimpses of how this agent-driven world might work and how it could make current businesses obsolete.
Yeah, Tenenbaum shared a really telling anecdote about trying to book a hotel in Phuket. He asked ChatGPT for hotel recommendations. And the AI kind of tentatively said something like, well, you could try using Booking.com.
Ah, so the AI is acting like an assistant, pointing him to the old platform.
For now, yes. It shows that intermediary stage we're in. The AI is suggesting the legacy player.
But that relationship itself shows Booking's vulnerability, doesn't it? If they need the AI to send them customers.
They're already becoming dependent, subservient, really. The future Tenenbaum paints is one where the agent becomes the trusted party.
How so?
You don't ask the agent for a list of hotels anymore. You tell your agent, find me a 5-star hotel in Phuket beachfront under $300 a night for these dates. And the agent does it, handles the negotiation, the booking, the payment. You never even visit Booking.com.
Okay, so the trust shifts entirely. From the vendor, like Booking, to your personal AI agent.
Exactly. And that trust is paramount for the agent. Why? Because if your agent messes up your hotel booking and loses your trust, it doesn't just lose that one transaction. It risks losing you as a customer for everything else it could do for you. Travel, shopping, finances, scheduling.
The relationship is much deeper.
Much deeper. The agent becomes like your digital fiduciary. And that structural shift makes purely transactional middlemen sites like Booking, whose only job is to take a cut, look completely redundant, functionally obsolete, hashtag B, the corporate fear and partnering with everyone.
So this race to build the winning agent and the fear of not building it or backing the wrong one, this is the driving force behind all the market chaos, Tenenbaum's corporate FOMO.
It's absolutely the dominant psychological factor right now, according to Tenenbaum. This palpable anxiety, this fear of not knowing which tech horse is going to win the race.
And because nobody knows for sure.
The only logical strategy, if you have the resources, is to bet on multiple horses. diversify massively,
Hmm.
and crucially, secure the essential resources before your competitors can lock them down.
Which explains why OpenAI, the octopus, is making deals all over the place, securing infrastructure.
The scale is just mind-boggling. Look at their deal with NVIDIA. Tenenbaum mentioned a huge phased agreement, potentially worth $100 billion,
$100 billion for chips.
for preferential access to NVIDIA's best cutting-edge GPUs tied to hitting certain milestones. They're essentially pre-buying the future supply chain, making sure they get the best stuff first.
And it's not just NVIDIA, right? They need specialized chips too, to avoid being totally reliant on one supplier.
Exactly. That's where the partnership with Broadcom comes in. Broadcom makes custom ASICs application-specific integrated circuits.
Chips designed for one specific job, basically.
Right. Super efficient for a particular task, unlike general-purpose GPUs. Google has their own tensor chips, for example. OpenAI knows it can't afford to wait or rely solely on NVIDIA, so they're securing custom silicon development with Broadcom to optimize their own models.
But securing resources isn't just about chips, is it? Tenenbaum mentioned geography, politics.
Absolutely. The deal with Oracle around that huge Stargate data center project, that's about building massive new AI factories in specific U.S. states, like Michigan.
Why Michigan specifically? Is it just cheap land?
Probably not just that. Tenenbaum suggests it's a strategic play to get preferential treatment. Lower taxes, maybe easier access to the massive amounts of power these things need?
And maybe looser rules?
Possibly. He hints at potentially more permissive environmental regulations regarding the huge water and energy consumption of these hyperscale data centers. It's a negotiation for resources on a state level.
So the data center race is also a political game over power grids and water rights.
It absolutely is. And you see competitors doing the same thing.
Yeah.
NVIDIA knows it needs more than chips, so it's buying up smaller AGI startups to get talent and new ideas.
Right.
AMD, NVIDIA's main rival, is striking huge data center deals directly with the U.S. government. The playbook is clear across the board. Bet on everything. Partner with everyone who can give you an edge or secure a resource. It's a frantic scramble. Hashtag shot C. The infrastructure bottleneck and compatibility.
Let's stick with infrastructure for a moment. My feeling was that all this frantic building data centers, GPUs, is fundamentally about avoiding a future bottleneck. You know, like how old economic areas didn't end because they ran out of, say, stone or oil.
But because the infrastructure to process or use it couldn't keep up with demand.
Exactly. Is that how Tenenbaum sees it?
He completely agrees with that interpretation. He uses that Stone Age analogy himself. Past tech eras ended not due to resource exhaustion, but infrastructure inadequacy. This massive spending on AI infrastructure is a preemptive strike to make sure the AI revolution doesn't choke on its own success due to a lack of processing power.
But you do hear people worrying about the opposite, right? That they're building too much infrastructure, that there's going to be a huge glut and a crash.
Tenenbaum pushes back on that. He firmly believes we're going to need significantly more infrastructure than we're even building now, especially as we move fully into the agent era.
Okay.
But all this frantic, uncoordinated building creates a huge looming problem of standardization, or rather, the lack of it.
Because everyone's building their own walled gardens with different parts, AMD chips here, NVIDIA there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Different chip architectures, different types of high-speed memory HBM from Sky Hynix versus Samsung. There's zero common standard, which might be efficient for each company individually in the short term.
But terrible for the ecosystem as a whole long term.
Devastating, potentially. If you had these massive, powerful AI infrastructures being built, but they can't easily talk to each other, what happens then? Do we end up with like 2 or 3 completely separate, incompatible AI universes?
That seems incredibly inefficient.
It is. And Tenenbaum makes this really interesting prediction here. He thinks a whole new industry is going to emerge, focused purely on compatibilization,
Making things talk to each other.
building the translation layers, the bridges between these different proprietary systems. He makes the point, look how long it took us to standardize something simple, like phone chargers, like 30 years of market pressure and regulation.
Yeah, good point.
The complexity and the stakes with AI infrastructure are infinitely higher. So, yeah, making these systems compatible will likely become a massive business in itself.
That makes a lot of sense. But speaking of companies maybe giving up the fight to build their own infrastructure, Tenenbaum gave a really stunning example of a super company, basically admitting defeat, Adobe.
Yeah, that was a jaw-dropper. Adobe.
Yeah.
A company that built its entire empire on brilliant, proprietary creative software like Photoshop, Illustrator, Flash back in the day.
Right. They defined digital creation for decades.
And Tenenbaum highlights that they recently signed a major agreement with Google to use Google's AI systems for core creative functions, like animation and video processing.
Wow. So Adobe is outsourcing its own creative engine, essentially.
It's basically a public admission that they can't keep up in the AI infrastructure race.
Yeah.
They're acknowledging they need to rely on a competitor for the heavy lifting.
What does Tenenbaum think that means for Adobe long term?
He interprets it very bluntly. Adobe is openly accepting a role as a second fiddle, a secondona, as he put it. They're becoming subservient to the platform giants. And he sees it as a sign that they're likely heading towards eventual disappearance, or at least significant diminishment.
Even Adobe.
Even Adobe. It shows the sheer power of this AI wave. They realize the cost, the speed, the talent required to build truly competitive, foundation-level AI for creativity was just impossible to match against the hyperscale players like Google or OpenAI. It's a stark admission of the new reality.
Okay, we've talked billions, trillions, data centers, corporate warfare, but this whole revolution ultimately lands on us, right? The individual user.
Yeah.
We need to talk about the human side, how AI is changing habits, psychology, privacy.
Absolutely. And this is where Tenenbaum really shifts focus onto psychological resistance, but also onto the ultimate prize for these AI companies, becoming a habit, an unconscious part of our lives, #A, user awareness versus adoption.
So let's start with adoption. We tech people talk about this stuff constantly, but is the public really ready? Is the supply of AI tech outpacing demand or even just awareness? Are people ready for autonomous agents running parts of their lives?
Tenenbaum observes that actually a large chunk of the population is quite resistant. They don't necessarily want this change.
Why not?
Well, for many, it feels threatening. It threatens jobs. It forces them to learn new, complex things. They might just want their old life back, the one they understood. He talks about a kind of willful ignorance setting in for some.
The don't tell me I don't want to know attitude.
Exactly. Or the it won't happen to my job, my industry denial.
That's a powerful psychological barrier. But historically, doesn't technology usually find a way to weave itself in, whether people initially resist or not?
It often does. And that leads to what Tenenbaum stresses is the ultimate goal for any AI company, becoming an unconscious habit.
Like Google search?
Perfect example. You don't consciously decide to Google something most of the time. You just do it. It's automatic. That reflex is the holy grail for these AI platforms.
So the race isn't just for the best tech, it's for becoming the default habit for specific tasks.
Precisely. Which AI becomes the go-to habit for search, for planning, for managing your finances? Will one platform capture multiple habits, or will we end up using different AIs for different things? Until those habits are deeply ingrained, adoption will probably stay uneven, and that resistance will remain a factor. #BAI as the confidential confidant.
Okay, this next point from Tenenbaum is fascinating, almost philosophical. He talks about using AI not just for tasks, but for emotional support, like dealing with guilt, comparing AI to a human confidant.
Yeah, it's a really provocative idea.
Yeah.
He analyzes what happens when someone feels guilty or burdened and seeks out a trusted human friend or advisor for, relief or absolution.
Yeah, we've all done that.
But Tenenbaum argues that turning to a human confidant carries 3 inherent risks, structural risks built into human relationships.
Okay, what are the 3 risks?
First, the person you confide in might actually disagree with you. They might judge your actions, tell you were wrong. You don't necessarily get the validation you're seeking. You might get a moral lecture instead.
Okay, risk 1, judgment. What's 2?
Risk 2. You immediately create a debt, a psychological IOU. They listened, they helped, now you kind of owe them one. It adds complexity to the relationship.
Right, the social ledger. And the 3rd risk?
The 3rd risk is loss of control. You've shared something private, intimate maybe. You're now dependent on their discretion. There's always that lingering fear. Will they gossip? Will they betray my confidence? Even accidentally.
Judgment, debt, and loss of control. Okay, so how does AI change that dynamic?
According to Tenenbaum, ChatGPT, or similar AIs, basically eliminate all 3 risks, making them incredibly appealing for this kind of emotional offloading.
How so?
Well, first, the AI is generally programmed to be supportive, non-judgmental. It's likely to exonerate you, offer comfort without moral condemnation. You get the relief without the judgment. Second, you owe the AI nothing. There's no emotional debt created. The interaction is clean, transactional in that sense.
No social awkwardness later.
None. And third, and maybe most powerfully, the AI is not a gossip. It has no social life, no incentive to spread your secrets. Your private information stays private, structurally speaking. That combination of non-judgment, no debt, and confidentiality makes the AI a uniquely safe, risk-free place to confess or seek emotional relief.
That's actually quite profound, but it raises a follow-up question, doesn't it? If AI offers risk-free absolution, does that cheapen the whole process of dealing with guilt? Don't we sometimes need that human judgment, that social consequence to develop our moral compass?
That's the huge philosophical dilemma Tenenbaum surfaces. Does easy, automated exoneration prevent necessary moral growth? His observation, though, seems to be that for many users right now, the low-risk relief offered by the AI simply outweighs the potential long-term philosophical cost.
Convenience and safety trump moral complexity.
It seems that way. The fact that the AI won't judge you, won't demand anything back, and won't betray you makes it the path of least resistance for dealing with difficult emotions. And that, Tenenbaum argues, is actively reshaping our internal psychological habits around guilt and confession. Set C, the confidentiality check, and the edge cases.
This deep level of trust, this potential for sharing our innermost thoughts, inevitably leads to the listener's biggest fear: confidentiality. Is it really safe to tell the AI everything? Am I building a perfect permanent dossier on myself?
It's the critical question, and Tenenbaum offers reassurance, but it's qualified. He points to three main factors that currently limit the risk, based on technology and business realities.
Okay, let's break down those three limits. What's the first one?
First is memory. As powerful as these AIs are, Tenenbaum notes they currently lack truly persistent, perfect long-term memory of individual users. They tend to forget details of past conversations over time. It's not like they're keeping a perfect searchable transcript of your entire life yet.
Okay, memory limits. Second.
Second is architecture. This is about how the systems are designed. Tenenbaum explains that different AI instances, different chat sessions, aren't built to talk to each other about specific users.
So my AI session won't gossip about me to your AI session.
Exactly. He uses the analogy.
Yeah.
If he asks ChatGPT about you, it won't say, "Oh yeah, I know him, he lives in Mar del Plata, let me tell you his secrets." The systems are generally siloed at the individual user interaction level. They aren't designed for that kind of cross-user gossip.
All right, memory architecture. What's the third and maybe most important limit?
The third, and Tenenbaum stresses this is the big one, is the business model. OpenAI, Google, Meta. They're businesses, not charities. Their entire multi-trillion-dollar potential relies on user trust.
If people stop trusting them with their data,
They leave. They go to a competitor, Grok, Gemini, whatever comes next. Maintaining confidentiality isn't just an ethical nice-to-have. It's an absolute business necessity. The financial imperative to keep secrets is probably the strongest guarantee of privacy right now. Lose trust, lose the business.
okay, that makes sense. But even with those safeguards, Tenenbaum did touch on some really difficult edge cases, right? Where confidentiality bumps up against real-world harm.
Yeah, these are the nightmare scenarios for these companies. He mentioned OpenAI recently revealing that something like 1 million users have discussed suicide with ChatGPT.
1 million people, wow.
And the system apparently has protocols to detect this, flag it, maybe redirect users to human support lines. But it immediately raises huge ethical and legal questions. Where does the AI's responsibility begin and end?
And what about darker things? Like if someone confesses plans to commit a crime? Or harm someone, especially a child?
This is where it gets incredibly murky.
Yeah.
Tenenbaum suggests the biggest concern might not actually be what the AI is programmed to report, but what it's programmed not to report or even record.
Because confidentiality is the prime directive for the business.
Exactly. If trust is paramount, the system might be incentivized to ignore, forget, or simply not log certain types of deeply sensitive or potentially criminal information, unless there's a very clear, legally mandated protocol forcing it to alert authorities.
So the focus shouldn't just be on the reporting protocols, but on the non-reporting rules. What are they choosing not to know?
That's Tenenbaum's point. The real scrutiny needs to be on those decisions. What information is the AI systematically programmed to disregard or forget to protect the business model, even if it hints at real-world danger? Who gets to decide what the AI is allowed not to count? That's a heavy ethical burden. #tag outro.
So where does this all leave us? Wrapping up this deep dive into Tenenbaum's analysis, it seems clear that OpenAI's strategy, this octopus approach, it's not just shaking things up. It feels like it's fundamentally rewriting the rules of the game.
Yeah, from the mind-blowing $3 trillion IPO potential to the aggressive partnering with NVIDIA, Broadcom, Oracle.
To just directly attacking Google's core business with Comet.
It seems like they are setting the terms for this whole new economic era.
And this strategy, Tenenbaum argues, is fueled by that intense corporate FOMO and basically unlimited capital.
Right, and the result is this hyper-competitive pressure cooker where established giants like Adobe are forced into subservient roles.
And entire public companies in sectors like HR, online learning, advertising are just getting wiped out financially, often, as Tenenbaum pointed out, costing shareholders their retirement savings.
And the agent revolution he described, it's not theoretical anymore. It's starting now, changing how we think about commerce, trust, even our own psychology with things like AI confidants.
Which explains the mad scramble for infrastructure, the chips, the data centers, despite all the headaches around compatibility and standardization that Tenenbaum highlighted.
Yeah, and maybe the single most striking takeaway from Tenenbaum's observations is the pace of it all. He literally said OpenAI is generating significant market-moving news every day of the week, including Saturdays and Sundays.
That relentless speed.
It forces everyone else, Google, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, into the same mode. This frantic, high-stakes, almost cocaine-like energy, as Tenenbaum put it, just to keep up.
It feels unsustainable just watching it, let alone participating in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe the final provocative thought Tenenbaum leaves us with for you, the listener, is this. How long can this possibly continue? This extreme velocity, this winner-takes-most competition?
Before something breaks or consolidates.
Right, before the inevitable market consolidation happens. And maybe more importantly, what happens to all the other companies, the other industries that simply can't maintain this feverish pace? What kind of systemic risk does this relentless acceleration, driven by a few giant players, introduce into the entire global economy when everyone is forced to operate beyond normal limits?
That's the multi-trillion-dollar question to carry forward.